All right, let's do this. We're diving deep today, deep into 1995. David Fincher. Seven. It's more than just a movie, right? It's like this dark, twisted mirror reflecting what the 90s felt like.
It really is.
But before we get into all that, I want you to think back to the 90s. What comes to mind? What was the mood?
The mood. It's interesting because the Seven really nails it. It captures that anxiety a lot of people were feeling.
Totally.
Crime was on the rise. Cities kind of felt like they were falling apart. And there was this underlying sense of unease, like things were unraveling. And Fincher, he doesn't shy away from that.
Not at all.
Visually, he throws you right into that world.
The look of that film.
Gloomy streets.
Yeah.
Rain-soaked everything. Cramped apartments. It's almost claustrophobic.
Like the city itself is closing in on you.
Exactly. It's another character in the film.
And, Seven wasn't alone. Other movies were tapping into that darkness, too. Around the same time, you had Pulp Fiction. A year before that, Silence of the Lambs. It's like filmmakers were picking up on something in the air.
Definitely. The mid-90s, it was a turning point. Audiences were ready for something different, more complex, more real, not just black and white, good versus evil.
Exactly.
And that's where Seven really shines, especially with how it uses the 7 deadly sins to tell its story.
Oh, those sins. They're not just religious concepts. They're like this blueprint for understanding human weakness.
Right. And Seven takes these age-old ideas and weaves them into a gritty, modern story.
So it's not just about solving a crime. It's about understanding what drives people to do terrible things, the dark impulses.
Exactly. It's like a why-doon-it as much as a who-doon-it.
And the film doesn't try to give you easy answers, It forces you to think about good and evil.
Yeah.
About what pushes people to extremes.
Yeah. And it doesn't flinch. It shows you the darkness that's inside all of us.
It makes you question your own morality. Like, are you all capable of that?
Yeah, it gets under your skin.
Oh, and speaking of things that get under your skin, that ending, I mean, come on.
Oh, man.
I still remember the first thing I saw. That tension just builds and builds. And then, bam, that box.
Yep, box.
What's in the box? It's become this iconic line.
People who haven't even seen the movie know that line.
It's crazy. But it's not just about shock value, right? It's like this gut punch that makes you think about the consequences, the ripple effects of violence.
It sticks with you. And it shows how influential Cicerone has been on crime dramas. It raised the bar.
Oh, yeah.
You could have suspense, thrills, and still go deep, ask those philosophical questions. Think about Zodiac or that first season of True Detective. They have that same Cezanne DNA. The darkness, the detectives fighting their own demons, the unflinching look at these awful crimes.
Sesame opened the door for a new kind of storytelling. Darker, more real. But it wasn't just about inspiring other filmmakers, was it? It started a conversation, a bigger conversation, out in the world.
Absolutely. Those themes, morality, violence, justice, they went beyond the screen. So Seven made people think about the ugly stuff. The stuff we don't want to admit is there, maybe even in ourselves.
Art can do that. Make us look in the mirror. Confront things we'd rather ignore.
It's powerful.
And what's interesting is Seven doesn't preach. It doesn't tell you what to think. It just shows you this messed up reflection and lets you decide what it means.
It throws you headfirst into this abyss of human nature.
You have to find your own way out.
Oh, but before we fall too deep into that abyss, I've got some fun facts about Seven, behind-the-scenes stuff.
Oh, I love behind-the-scenes stuff. Spill it.
Okay, so the screenwriter, Andrew Kevin Walker. You know what sparked the idea for the whole film?
Know what?
He saw a detective crying while writing a report.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That one image sparked this whole intricate, layered story.
And of course, we can't talk about Seven without talking about the box, the crew. They went to extreme lengths to keep the content secret from the cast.
Until the very last scene.
Yeah, they wanted those reactions to be genuine.
The tension on set must have been insane.
And Fincher, he had this vision for the film so dark, so raw, but he had to fight for it. Studio execs, they weren't so sure.
Really?
They thought it was too much, too disturbing for people to handle.
It's hard to imagine Cezanne any other way. Fincher's style is all over it.
Totally.
The detail, the bleak colors, the way he builds that tension.
Yeah.
He created this grim, unsettling world.
Masterfully. It's 90s cinema at its best.
It defines the decade, and it goes beyond it.
Yeah.
What strikes me is how Cezanne manages to be both things, a gripping thriller, but also this deep reflection on what it means to be human.
It is, isn't it?
It's not just about catching a killer, it's about looking into that abyss of human nature, asking ourselves if we're capable of that kind of darkness.
Holding up a dark mirror.
And it's not a one-time watch. It's a film that stays with you. You think about it long after it's over. Every time you watch it, you see something new.
It really gets under your skin, like a bad dream that you can't shake.
A bad dream that makes you confront some uncomfortable truths.
Yeah. You know, thinking about it now, it's interesting how Sus7 seems to foreshadow our obsession with true crime today.
Oh, totally.
The psychology of the killer, the details, the darkness, it's all there.
Like a blueprint for those true crime podcasts and documentaries we're all obsessed with.
Exactly. We're fascinated by that dark side, trying to understand what makes people do those things.
And what I appreciate is it doesn't exploit the darkness. It respects the victims, their stories.
It examines the darkness, doesn't glorify it, and that's a hard line to walk, but Sus7 does it.
That's what makes it stand out. It shows you the gruesome stuff. But ultimately, it's a story about us, about good versus evil, the struggle that plays out inside us and all around us.
It forces you to look at that darkness, the potential for evil we all have, but it also hints at redemption, choosing good, even when everything seems horrible.
And that makes Sus7 so relevant, even now. It's not
Yeah.
just a 90s movie. It's a timeless story about what it means to be human.
It speaks to everyone, across generations, those questions it asks. Still relevant today.
Speaking of relevant, this podcast, if you're digging this deep dive, why not share it? Spread the 90s love. Maybe spark a conversation. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. You won't miss out on future deep dives right here on That 90s Pod.
We've got a whole archive waiting for you. Music, fashion, pop culture, tech, everything 90s.
Now, before we jump into the final part of our deep dive, I want to share something personal about Sus7. The first time I saw it, I was pretty young.
Ooh, I bet that was quite an experience. Sus7 is definitely not for the faint of heart.
It definitely left an impact. I had nightmares about that box for weeks.
Yeah.
But beyond the shock, it made me look at the world differently. It made me realize there's a lot of darkness out there, but there's also a lot of beauty and resilience.
But that's the power of great art. It shapes you up, it challenges you, it makes you see things in a new way.
It's like planting a seed that keeps growing.
And with a film like Sus7, those seeds can be pretty powerful.
They can make you question things, confront your fears, and ultimately understand the world a little better, even the dark parts.
It's all part of the journey. And we can't forget about the colors, or the lack of color.
Yeah, the color palette.
It's like Fincher sucked all the vibrancy out of the world.
Totally.
You're left with these washed out tones, this sense of decay, even the rain.
Oh, the rain. It's relentless.
It's not just rain, it's like this constant downpour washing away any hope.
It's amazing how the color, or the lack of it, really impacts how you feel.
Right, it's like this visual representation of, like, moral decay eating away at the city.
And to think this almost didn't happen. Fincher's vision, it was considered too dark.
Oh, yeah, I remember reading about that.
Some studio execs, they were worried it'd be too much for audiences.
They thought it's too edgy.
Too disturbing. Thank goodness New Line Cinema took a chance.
Yeah, a watered-down Sus7, no thanks.
It wouldn't be the same. And it wasn't just a box office hit. It got critical acclaim, too. Oh, yeah. The critics loved it. The direction, the performances, the writing, it all worked.
What gets me about Sus7 is it's more than just a thriller.
It's deeper.
It's like this meditation on what it means to be human.
Totally.
It makes you think about the big questions.
It's not just about the case. It's about looking into the darkest parts of ourselves.
That abyss of human nature.
Exactly. It's like holding up a mirror. A dark one. Makes you face some hard truths.
And it's not a one-time wash either. It stays with you. Every time I watch it, I notice something new.
It gets under your skin, you know, like a bad dream you can't shake.
A bad dream that makes you confront some uncomfortable truths.
It's funny, when I think about it now, Sus7 was almost like a prediction.
A prediction of what?
Our obsession with true crime, think about it. The way Sus7 digs into the mind of a killer, the details, the darkness.
It's all there.
It's like the blueprint for all those true crime podcasts and documentaries we're hooked on now. It's that fascination with the dark side, trying to understand what makes people do these horrible things.
But what I like is it doesn't feel exploitative.
No.
It respects the victims, their stories.
It doesn't glorify the darkness. It examines it.
That's a tough balance.
It is. But Sus7 nails it.
That's what makes it so good. It shows you the ugly stuff, but it's really a story about us, about good versus evil, that struggle inside each of us and in the world around us.
It forces you to acknowledge the darkness,
Yeah.
that potential for evil we all have.
Right.
But it also hints at the good,
Redemption.
choosing to do the right thing, even in the face of horrible things.
And that makes it so relevant. Even today, it's timeless.
It's not just a 90s movie.
It's about being human.
It resonates with everyone.
Those questions it asks.
Still relevant.
Speaking of relevant, this podcast, if
What?
you're enjoying this deep dive, tell your friends. Spread the 90s love. Start a conversation. And hey, hit that subscribe button. Don't miss out on future episodes of that 90s pod.
We've got a ton of episodes waiting for you. Music, fashion, pop culture, technology. We cover it all.
Before we head into the last part of our deep dive, I want to share something. A little personal story about Sis 7. The first time I saw it, I was pretty young.
Oh, wow. That must have been something. Sesson is not for the faint of heart.
It definitely left a mark.
Mm.
I had nightmares about that box for weeks. But honestly, it changed how I saw the world. I realized there's a lot of darkness out there, but there's also a lot of good. Beauty, resilience,
That's what great art can do. It can shake you up, make you see things differently.
like planting a seed that keeps growing.
And with a film like Sesame, those seeds are strong. They can make you question everything, confront your fears, understand the world better, even the dark parts.
It's all part of the journey.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really does make you think about the big stuff, the tough questions. It's a film that stays with you, you know.
It does. It really gets under your skin. Sesame is just masterful. The way it unsettles you, it's incredible.
Okay, before we wrap up, I gotta ask. Imagine you're a detective. In Sakavin's world,
Yeah.
that darkness. Every single day, how do you cope?
Oh, man, that's the question, isn't it? I think Somerset, maybe he had it figured out, at least in some ways. All that cynicism, like he'd seen it all.
Whoa, weary.
He tried to stay detached, like the case was just a puzzle, an intellectual thing, not letting the horror get to him, you know?
But even Somerset, even he couldn't escape it, right? In the end,
Yeah.
it got to him.
No one escapes it completely, but maybe his way, that distance, it was his way of surviving.
That letting
Consume him.
like trying to stay afloat in a sea of despair. You got to find something to hold on to. Hope, purpose, or you drown.
You have to find that balance, seeing the evil, but not letting it take over, not losing yourself, your own humanity.
And that's something we all deal with, right? Not just detectives, everyone. How do we live in a world where this stuff happens?
Yeah.
Where there's so much darkness? How do we hold on to hope without ignoring the reality?
That's a question for the ages. Philosophers, artists, they've been wrestling with that forever. And Set 7, it just lays it bare, forces you to confront it, the dark side. No sugarcoating.
It throws you in the deep end, head first.
And that's what makes it so powerful, so real, so lasting.
Doesn't give you easy answers.
Nope. Just leaves you with this feeling like the darkness is always there, just below the surface.
Well, on that cheerful note, it's time to wrap up our deep dive into Cess 7. What a trip.
It really is a wild one. It's one of those films that just sticks with you, makes you question everything. Good and evil, justice, redemption, it's all there.
Huge thanks to everyone for joining us, taking this journey back to the 90s. And hey, if you enjoyed this episode, if Cess 7 got under your skin like it did for us, make sure you subscribe to that 90s pod. We've got more deep dives coming your way, exploring all the things that made that decade so iconic.
Music, fashion, pop culture, technology, we cover it all.
And spread the 90s love. Tell your friends about the podcast, share your favorite episodes. Let's keep the conversation going.
Until next time, stay curious, stay rad, and maybe keep a light on. You never know what might be lurking in the shadows.